My name is Tara Reed, 34 years old, a fashion designer with a small boutique in Louisville, Kentucky. I've spent years building my brand, pouring my heart into sustainable designs, hoping one day my parents would see my worth. But nothing prepared me for that Sunday family dinner. It was supposed to be our usual monthly gathering, good food, small talk, maybe a few laughs. I walked in with a bottle of my dad's favorite wine, thinking I'd finally get a nod of approval. Then, out of nowhere, my parents dropped a bombshell. "The $200,000 we gave you, what did you do with it?" my dad asked. His voice, sharp eyes locked on me. I froze my fork halfway to my mouth. $200,000. What do you mean? I managed to choke out, my heart pounding. My brother, sitting across the table, went pale, his hands gripping his glass so tight I thought it'd shatter. My mom's face was unreadable, but she didn't back me up. The air felt thick, like the room was closing in. I tried to laugh it off, thinking it was a mistake, but my dad slid a bank statement across the table. It had my name on it, or something close. I felt my stomach drop. What was going on? Why was my brother avoiding my eyes? I had no idea that night would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. Stick around, this gets messy. If you've ever had a family moment that turned your world upside down, drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. To understand why that question shook me to my core, you need to know about my family. I'm Tara Reed, raised in a Louisville suburb where my brother Derek and I were inseparable as kids. We'd spend sunny afternoons playing hide and seek in the backyard, giggling as we ducked behind trees or squeezed into tight corners. Derek, 2 years my senior, was my protector, always taking the blame when I broke Mom's favorite plate or spilled juice on the couch. Those carefree days made me believe our bond would last forever, that we'd always be there for each other. My father, Harold Reed, 65, started with a single roadside motel and turned it into a chain of boutique hotels across Kentucky. He's a man driven by ambition, always talking about building a legacy, expecting Derek and me to carry the Reed name into the family business. He measured success in contracts signed and profits earned, and he wanted us to follow his blueprint. My mother, Susan Reed, 62, was a bank manager before retiring, always standing by Dad, handling the finances with quiet precision. She rarely spoke up, her role shaped by his vision, her agreement a constant in our home. Derek was their pride and joy. He jumped into the hotel business right after high school, charming clients and closing deals with ease. When he led the opening of a new hotel in Frankfurt, Dad was over the moon. "That's my son," he'd say at family gatherings, his voice filled with admiration. Mom would nod, her smile reserved for Derek, as if he carried all their hopes. They saw him as the future of Reed Hotels, the one who'd keep their legacy alive. I had a different dream. I loved sketching clothes, creating designs that felt like pieces of my soul. When I told my parents I wanted to study fashion design in college, Dad dismissed it. "That's a fantasy, Tara," he said, his tone cutting. Mom just looked away, suggesting I choose something solid like Derek. I refused to give up. I moved to Chicago for college, spending countless nights in the design studio, stitching fabrics and refining my craft. I wanted to prove I could succeed on my own terms without their approval or the family business. But their comparisons were relentless. Every time I came home, it was the same. "Derek's making waves," Dad would say, ignoring my portfolio of designs. "You should learn from him, Tara." Mom would add, "Your brother's carrying our name. Why not do something like that?" I'd bite my lip, forcing a smile, but it stung. I felt like a stranger in my own family, my work brushed off as a childish whim. Derek was their shining star, and I was the one who didn't belong. As the years passed, Derek started pulling away. He'd skip my calls, send one-word replies, always too busy with the hotels. I thought he was just caught up in Dad's world, shouldering their expectations. I didn't see the strain in his eyes, the way he'd fidget when we talked. I was too busy fighting my own battle, pouring my heart into my boutique to prove I wasn't a failure. But those years of being compared to Derek, of feeling invisible, were slowly building a wall between us, a wall I didn't know was about to come crashing down. Looking back, I see how those moments shaped me. Every time Dad dismissed my dreams, I worked harder staying up late to perfect my designs, driven by a need to prove myself. But no matter what I did, I couldn't escape their judgment. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" Dad's words echoed in my mind, pushing me to keep going even when it hurt. I didn't realize then that Derek was struggling too, hiding something under the weight of their praise. Those childhood days of hide and seek felt like a distant memory, and the gap between us was growing wider every day. After college, I poured everything into my fashion boutique, but it never seemed enough for my parents. I'd moved back to Louisville, opening a small shop called Thread and Soul in the heart of the Highlands. I focused on sustainable designs, dresses made from recycled fabrics, jackets with eco-friendly dyes. My boutique gained a loyal following with local blogs praising my work and customers raving about the unique pieces. I'd spend long days sketching new collections, negotiating with suppliers, and hosting pop-up events. It wasn't easy, but seeing my designs come to life made every late night worth it. I thought I was building something real, something that could make them proud. Meanwhile, Derek was running Reed Hotels, the family business Dad had built from the ground up. He was their golden child, the one they trusted to carry their legacy. Dad would brag about Derek's latest deals, how he'd secured partnerships with big travel agencies. Mom would nod along her eyes, sparkling with pride, calling him the perfect heir. But what they didn't know, what none of us knew, was that Derek was in trouble. He'd been sinking money into risky cryptocurrency ventures, chasing quick profits to impress Dad. Those investments tanked, leaving the hotels with heavy losses he kept hidden. He'd stay up late, glued to his phone, checking market updates, his face tight with worry. Every time I saw my parents, the comparisons hit hard. I'd bring photos of my boutique's latest collection, hoping for a shred of approval. Dad would glance at them and say, "Nice, Tara, but Derek's closing million-dollar deals." Mom would add, "Your brother's keeping the family name strong. You could take a cue from him." Their words stung like I was still a kid chasing a silly hobby. I'd go home and throw myself into work sketching until my hands cramped, determined to prove them wrong. I landed a feature in a local magazine, even got invited to a regional fashion expo. But when I told my parents, Dad just shrugged. "That's cute," he said. "But it's not like running a real business." The tension in our family grew thicker. I'd try to talk to Derek, hoping to reconnect, but he was always distracted. He'd check his phone mid-conversation, barely responding to my questions about his life. "I'm fine, Tara," he'd snap, brushing me off. I thought he was just busy, maybe stressed from managing the hotels. I didn't know he was drowning in his own mistakes, hiding the losses from everyone. Our dinners together felt strained, with Dad praising Derek's every move and Mom echoing his approval. I'd sit there forcing a smile, feeling like an outsider in my own family. I pushed harder at the boutique, taking on custom orders, collaborating with local artists for exclusive lines. My shop started turning a small profit, enough to hire an assistant. I was proud, but it felt hollow without my parents' support. I'd call Mom hoping to share my wins, but she'd steer the conversation back to Derek. "He's working so hard," she'd say, as if my efforts didn't count. I started avoiding family gatherings, dreading the inevitable comparisons. The distance between me and Derek grew, too. He'd stopped joking with me, stopped being the brother who'd once had my back. I missed him, but I didn't know how to reach him anymore. Looking back, I see how those years broke something in me. Every time Dad called Derek the perfect heir, it was like a knife twisting in my chest. I'd lie awake at night replaying their words, wondering why my dreams weren't enough. I doubled down, working longer hours, pushing my boutique to new heights. But no matter how many customers praised my designs or how many orders piled up, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd never measure up. Derek's secret struggles were still hidden, but the weight of our parents' expectations was crushing us both, pulling us further apart. I didn't know it then, but the truth about him was about to change everything. That Sunday started like any other family dinner, but It turned into a nightmare. I spent the morning preparing, hoping to impress my parents. I'd brought a bottle of Dad's favorite Cabernet Sauvignon, a vintage he loved, thinking it might spark a conversation about my boutique's recent success. I arrived at their Louisville home, the familiar smell of roasted chicken filling the air. We sat around the dining table, the same one we'd used for years, and for a moment everything felt normal. Dad launched into a story about a new hotel deal, his voice animated as he described meeting investors. Mom shared updates about her book club, raving about a novel they'd just discussed. I smiled, waiting for a chance to mention my latest collection. Then out of nowhere, the mood shifted. Dad set his fork down, his face hardening. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "Tara, we need to talk," he said, his tone sharp. I froze, my heart sinking. Mom looked uneasy but stayed silent as Dad opened the folder, revealing bank statements. "These show $200,000 transferred to an account in your name," he said, his eyes locked on mine. I stared at the papers, my mind racing. The numbers were clear, but they made no sense. I'd never seen that account, never touched that money. "I don't know what this is," I said, my voice trembling. "This isn't mine." Dad's expression didn't soften. "Don't lie to us, Tara," he snapped. "This is serious." I looked at Derek, hoping for support, but he was staring at his plate, his face pale, his hands clenched. He didn't say a word, didn't even look up. Mom tried to step in, her voice soft. "Maybe there's a misunderstanding," she said, but Dad cut her off. "No, Susan. This is clear evidence." I felt like the room was closing in, my chest tight with shock and betrayal. How could they think I'd do this? Dad's voice grew colder. "You have 1 week to return the money, Tara, or I'm calling the police." The words hit like a punch. I opened my mouth to protest, but nothing came out. Mom reached for my hand, her eyes pleading. "Just explain, Tara," she said. But her voice wavered, like she wasn't sure of me either. I pulled my hand away, tears stinging my eyes. Derek still hadn't spoken, his silence louder than any accusation. I couldn't stay there, couldn't sit with their distrust. I stood, grabbing my coat, the bottle of Cabernet still unopened on the table. I drove home in a daze, the city lights blurring through my tears. My parents thought I'd betrayed them, and Derek, my brother, who'd once been my closest ally, hadn't said a word to defend me. The pain was raw, like a wound I couldn't close. I replayed the dinner in my mind, every word, every glance. Why hadn't Derek spoken up? What was he hiding? I didn't have answers, but one thing was clear. I had to find the truth. I couldn't let this accusation destroy me, not after everything I'd worked for. As I sat in my apartment staring at the bank statements I'd taken a photo of, I felt a fire ignite inside me. I wasn't going to let this stand. I'd spent years fighting to prove myself, building my boutique from nothing, only to be doubted at every turn. This was different. This was personal. I didn't know how that money ended up in an account with my name, but I was going to figure it out. My parents' words echoed in my head, but so did my resolve. I wasn't the failure they thought I was, and I'd prove it no matter what it took. The next morning, I headed straight to the bank, determined to clear my name. Running my own boutique meant I didn't answer to anyone, so I closed the shop for a few hours and drove downtown, my mind racing with questions from that disastrous dinner. At my usual bank, I met with a manager who reviewed my accounts. No sign of the $200,000, no strange deposits or transfers. My records were clean. A wave of relief hit me, but it didn't last. The account my parents had shown me wasn't mine, and I needed to know why it bore my name. I went to another bank, one tied to Reed Hotels' business accounts, and asked about the mysterious transfer. After some back and forth, the clerk revealed an account under Tara E. Reed. My name is Tara A. Reed. The middle initial was off, but the similarity was deliberate. Someone had created this account to point fingers at me. My heart pounded as I snapped photos of the documents, knowing I was onto something bigger than a mistake. Back at my apartment, I called Allison Carter, a sharp accountant I'd met through a boutique collaboration. She was a wizard with numbers and had a knack for spotting inconsistencies. I sent her the photos and we spent hours on the phone dissecting the records. Allison uncovered a name: Jude Hayes, a recent hire at Reed Hotels. His login had been used to access the company's financial system when the fake account was set up. An email trail showed he'd coordinated with Derek on fund transfers, though the details were vague. My stomach twisted. Could my brother really be behind this? I found Derek that night at a quiet bar in Louisville's New Lou district, nursing a drink at a corner table. His phone screen glowed, casting shadows on his tense face. I sat across from him, my pulse hammering. "We need to talk, Derek," I said, keeping my voice firm. He glanced up, irritation flickering in his eyes. "What's this about?" he asked, his tone clipped. I slid the bank statement across the table, pointing to the fake account. "This has my name on it," I said. "But it's not mine. You know why, don't you?" Derek's jaw tightened, his fingers pausing on his glass. He didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned back, exhaling heavily. "I screwed up," he said, his voice barely audible. He admitted he'd siphoned the money from the hotel funds, chasing a cryptocurrency deal that promised big returns. It collapsed, leaving a gaping hole in the accounts. To hide his failure, he'd worked with Jude Hayes to create the fake account using a name close to mine to shift suspicion. "I didn't think they'd push it this far," he said, but his words lacked regret. I was floored. "You let Mom and Dad believe I did this?" I asked, my voice shaking with disbelief. Derek met my gaze, his expression hard. "You made it easy," he said. "You're always off with your boutique, not contributing to the family business. They were bound to doubt you." His words were a slap, cutting deeper than any of Dad's accusations. This was the brother who'd once been my confidant, now blaming me for his lies. Fury surged through me. "You turned on me," I said, my hands trembling. "I trusted you, Derek." He showed no remorse, just shrugged and sipped his drink. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," he said. "The hotel's Dad's expectations, you're free of all that." I stood, my vision blurring with angry tears. "You're not the brother I loved?" I said, my voice breaking as I walked away. He didn't try to stop me. Back home, I sat in the dark, the weight of Derek's betrayal crushing me. The evidence Allison had helped me uncover was clear, but it couldn't erase the pain. My brother, the one I'd once looked up to, had thrown me to the wolves to save himself. I clutched the bank records, my resolve hardening. I'd clear my name, not just to prove my parents wrong, but to expose Derek's deception. The truth was mine now, but the scars of his betrayal would linger. 2 days later, I discovered something even worse about Derek. Allison Carter, my accountant friend, texted me with alarming news. A rival boutique in Louisville had launched a collection mirroring my sustainable designs, right down to the eco-friendly patterns I'd spent months crafting. My stomach dropped. Those designs were my heart and soul, shared only with trusted colleagues. Allison suspected sabotage and suggested I check my boutique's email server. Digging through my account, I found an email from Derek to the rival's owner attaching my sketches and offering them for cash to clear some debts. A follow-up message confirmed my worst fears. Derek had been drowning in online gambling losses, not just cryptocurrency failures, and sold my work to pay them off. I was devastated. After the fake account, this felt like a deeper betrayal. My brother had attacked my career, the one thing I'd built on my own. I called Allison, who jumped into action. Together, we scoured my cloud backups, uncovering deleted texts where Derek boasted to a friend about quick money from my designs. We compiled a dossier, emails, texts, even access logs showing Derek had used my boutique's system. I couldn't let this slide. I decided to confront my entire family, not just Derek, but Mom and Dad too. They needed to know the truth about their golden child. That night, I drove to my parents' house, my evidence folder clutched tightly. The living room felt suffocating as we gathered around the dining table. I didn't mince words. "Derek sold my designs to a competitor," I said, spreading out the emails and texts. He's been gambling online using my work to cover his losses. Derek's eyes widened, his face paling, but he didn't deny it. I was backed into a corner. He said, his voice flat. The hotel's dad's demands, it's crushing me. I had to do something. His excuse felt like a slap, shifting blame to our parents instead of owning his actions. Dad's face hardened. Tara, you're making a mountain out of a molehill, he said, his tone dismissive. Derek's carrying the family business. He's under pressure you wouldn't understand. Mom nodded, her expression cold. You're overreacting, Tara, she said. Your designs aren't the family legacy. Derek's trying to keep us afloat. I stared at them, my heart sinking. They were siding with him, brushing off my livelihood as trivial. My voice trembled with anger. You've always put him first, I said. I've fought for my boutique, but you ignore it. Now he's destroyed my work, and you're excusing him. The argument exploded. Derek snapped. You're too caught up in your own world, Tara. You don't know what I'm dealing with. Dad raised his voice, accusing me of tearing the family apart over something he called minor. Mom echoed him, saying I was blowing things out of proportion and should support Derek instead of attacking him. I laid out every piece of evidence, the emails, the texts, but they waved it away, insisting Derek's actions were just a mistake. My frustration boiled over. You're blind to his faults, I said, tears stinging my eyes. You've chosen him over me my entire life, and now my career's paying for it. No one yielded. Derek refused to apologize. Dad kept defending the family legacy, and Mom backed him up, dismissing my pain. I stood, my hands shaking as I grabbed my folder. I'm done begging for your respect, I said, my voice breaking. You're not my family anymore. I walked out the door, closing with a heavy thud. As I drove away, the reality hit me: our family was broken beyond repair. Derek's sabotage and my parents' favoritism had torn us apart. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew I was done fighting for their approval. 6 months later, I was living a new life, but the scars remained. I had severed all ties with my family, deleting their contacts and steering clear of their Louisville circles. My boutique became my refuge, where I channeled my energy into a new sustainable fashion line. With Allison Carter's guidance, I launched the collection, and it was a hit. Local blogs raved and customers lined up. The success felt like a quiet triumph, proof I could thrive without my family's approval. Still, the pain of their actions lingered, a reminder of the trust I'd lost. Allison shared news about Derek gathered from industry whispers. His gambling debts had spiraled, costing him his job at Reed Hotels when the board uncovered his financial mismanagement. Bankruptcy followed, leaving him isolated and penniless. His actions, siphoning funds and selling my designs, had not only ruined him, but also tarnished the family name. Dad and Mom, who had fiercely defended him, paid a heavy price too. Their blind favoritism led to their downfall. They lost both children as I refused to return, and Derek became a pariah in their eyes. The Reed legacy, once their pride, crumbled under the weight of their son's recklessness and their own refusal to see the truth. Dad and Mom withdrew from Louisville's social scene, their reputation battered by the hotel's struggles and Derek's scandals. Allison heard they avoided old friends, too proud to admit they'd backed the wrong child. Their silence toward me was deafening. They never called, never apologized. Their stubbornness cost them their daughter and their standing in the community, a consequence of choosing loyalty to Derek over fairness to me. I felt a pang of sorrow, but their refusal to own their mistakes solidified my choice to move on. Allison was my anchor, offering more than just financial expertise. She spent late nights helping me plan the boutique's expansion and lifted my spirits when the past weighed heavy. One evening over drinks, she said, "You've built something incredible, Tara. They don't define you." Her support reminded me I could forge my own path, surrounded by people who valued me. She was my chosen family, a light in the darkness left by my parents and brother. Reflecting on it all, I learned painful but vital lessons. Honesty is essential, but it can't always heal a fractured family. Derek's greed, my parents' bias, they all faced consequences for their choices. Derek lost everything while dad and mom lost their children and their legacy. I chose to walk away, and though it hurt, it freed me to build a life true to myself. We all answer for our actions, and sometimes that means letting go of those who refuse to change. I want to hear your stories. Have you faced family pressure or betrayal that forced you to start over? Drop your experiences in the comments. Let's share how we find strength to move forward no matter the cost. Your voice could inspire someone else to keep going.